market. This is an important addition to the toolkit available for investors globally to be able to diversify their investments and get access to where we're seeing such exciting leadership. It's fantastic. I'll move on to our panel now. First, a couple of bits of logistics and information. This panel, of course, is about meeting China's ambitious 2060 carbon neutrality goal. Xi Jinping's commitment made last year was for peak emissions by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. And I'm going to say the work being done in China on how to advance the agenda to meet this now is amazing. Every department, every committee, every organisation has a committee, I should say, working on this at this stage. People say China's not moving. I'm saying it is extraordinary how fast China is going to move. We certainly expect them to beat their targets, but of course, I'm always ambitious. We have to thank all our sponsors today, of course, Ping An Asset Management of China, above all, who are the premium sponsor for all of today's events, and a relationship we hold very dear to our hearts for all the reasons you know, because of the long history in China. Remember that the world's climate will be won or lost in China. The extent to which China can be successful in meeting Xi Jinping's commitments will be the extent to which we are able to properly address our emissions challenge globally. This is a critically important market for everyone to understand, to engage and to support. Today, we've got some speakers coming through, but first, Q&A questions. There's a button on your page. Have a look for it. Other comments or queries, go to chat. There is live interpretation in Mandarin, Chinese, as well as French, Spanish and Portuguese. You'll need the interpretation in this next session. Some of the speakers will be speaking in Chinese. You'll need to press the English button. Look for the headphone icon. All sessions are being recorded. You'll be able to listen later when you're going for a walk in the park. Use the cool tools we've got for networking and for virtual booths from different organisations. And of course, if you're media, remember we can arrange interviews. Go to our virtual booth. Today, we are really privileged to have some pretty cool speakers. We've got Huang Dafei, who's the Executive Director of the China International Capital Corporation. We've got Zhengwei, who's the Chief Economist of the China Industrial Bank and a friend. We've done some webinars before early this year. We've also got Zengxin, who's Deputy General Manager of Caixin Global, China's premier business magazine and a climate bonds media partner that we're very privileged to have a relationship with. And Juan Yen, who's the Deputy Director of the Bond Issuing Department of the China Development Bank. This is no small bank. This is the world's largest development bank and has been the driver of development in China. A couple of years ago, I had the chance to give a speech to introduce Chen Yuan, the former and legendary head of the China Development Bank. And I said it then, something I'll say to you now. This is the engine of the development story in China over the last 30 years. It has invested where there were paddy fields in Pudong. It has invested where there were just ideas waiting to germinate. And it worked. It has been the foundation of the creation of the modern Chinese economy. Now we know, as President Xi Jinping has said, that we have to now change that economy. We have to address the environmental challenges facing it. But it's an enormous achievement what's already been done. In fact, it's one of the things that gives me hope. The extent to which China, led by the China Development Bank in the 1990s and 2000s, has been able to build from scratch makes me think we could build globally a clean, green, resilient economy really quickly as well. We need those Chinese engineers. We need those Chinese financiers to help us grow. But hey, that's my view. Let me go to the panel. We want to have a discussion today about the growth of the Chinese market, the implications of the current market, and particularly President Xi Jinping's comments about targets for 2030 and 2060. What I'd like to start off with is, and we're missing a speaker, unfortunately, still collecting. I'll need to see how we go. What I'd like to start off with is Juan Yen, who's the Deputy Director of the Bond Issuing Department of the China Development Bank. She has to leave during the course of the session, so I'm very keen to get her comments early because, as you know, I'm incredibly excited by the China Development Bank's participation. It's worth noting that the China Development Bank has recently issued two large carbon neutral bonds. They're certified by the Climate Bonds Initiative, in fact, in the past 2 months, and helping to lead this movement in the Chinese market for the growth of carbon neutrality. So excited to have you here today. Ms. Huang, please go ahead. And then afterwards we'll move to Dr. Liu from the China Industrial Bank. Are we okay, team, on the technicals?
Yeah, we just want to get your intro in again, if that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, so you just want to get the intro in again, yes?
Do you need me to repeat?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
From where? Right from the opening of the session.
Is that from opening of the session? Intro, speak again. Intro to speak again.
Everything. I'm at a long speech.
Just hang on a second. Speak again.
结束了吧？好，尊敬的各位嘉宾、女士们、先生们，大家下午好！非常高兴来参加咱们这个2021年的气候债券倡议组织年会。借此机会呢，与大家一同探讨中国的碳中和目标这个议题，并分享国家开发银行在绿色金融领域的具体实践。中国要如期完成碳达峰、碳中和的目标，仅靠政府资金远远不够。 金融体系需要发挥重要的作用。从过去的经验看，开发性金融可以提供大额的、中长期的、低成本的资金，一定程度上可以弥补绿色项目因正外部性所导致的市场失灵，发挥一个引导市场的基础性作用。那么，国家开发银行是直属国务院领导的开发性金融机构，多年来坚持绿色可持续发展理念。 立足开发性金融职能定位，系统推进绿色金融业务发展，积极支持生态环保领域，在服务绿色发展中担当金融先锋，取得良好成效，受到广泛认可。作为中国第一个加入联合国全球契约的金融机构，开发银行制定了国家开发银行关于绿色金融发展的指导意见。这个指导意见 就明确提出来，要将绿色发展、循环发展和低碳发展作为自身发展的核心价值观之一，积极开展负责任的融资。首先从负债端来看，我们发行了系列的专题绿色债券，引导社会资金支持绿色发展。作为我国目前最大的债券银行，国家开发银行大力推进债券发行的产品、机制、 渠道创新，探索丰富绿色金融产品服务，降低绿色项目融资成本，提高绿色金融服务覆盖率、可得性、便利性，助力绿色产业发展。气候债券标准是国际市场主流的绿色债券标准之一，也与碳达峰、碳中和目标高度契合。早在2017年11月，国家开发银行就与 气候债券倡议组织展开了绿色债券认证方面的合作，成功发行了首笔获 CBI 贴标的中国准主权国际绿色债券，包括5年期美元债5亿、 和4年期欧元债10亿，获得了国际投资者的高度认可。去年7月，开发银行在上海成功通过多市场发行3年期100亿元首单应对气候变化专题绿色金融债券，推动债券市场基础设施互联互通，促进债券市场要素自由顺畅联动，被纳入了2020年上海国际金融中心建设10大事件。在此还要特别感谢肖恩·基德尼首席执行官专门通过视频的方式对发行成功表示祝贺。今年以来，国家开发银行立足国家重大区域战略，加大力度，积极服务国家双碳目标落实。已发行的400亿元绿色金融债券符合人民银行绿色债券支持项目目录的同时，均满足最新气候债券 3.0 标准，并获 CBI 贴标，为绿色低碳转型升级提供强有力融资支持。3月18日，我们发行了首单碳中和债券200亿元，作为唯一债券案例被纳入联合国全球契约组织企业碳中和路径图，为金融服务业制定碳中和举措和路径图提供了经验启示。7月16日，我们又发行了100亿元的黄河流域生态保护和高质量发展专题绿色金融债券。7月28日，发行100亿长江经济带发展专题绿色金融债券，均受到了境内外投资人踊跃认购。债券募集的资金将用于节能环保、清洁能源、基础设施绿色升级等具有显著碳减排的项目。项目建成后，预计每年可节约标准煤 737.11 万吨，减排二氧化碳 1904.06 万吨，二氧化硫 4269.73 吨，氮氧化物 4743.24 吨。截至7月末，国家开发银行已累计发行人民币金融债券900亿元，并通过在商业银行发售柜台债的方式，带动广大百姓参与绿色发展，累计承销发行绿色债券27支，金额322.5亿元，引导实体经济绿色发展和低碳转型。从资产端来看呢，我们大力发展绿色信贷，精准支持重点领域。作为国内最大的绿色信贷银行，开发银行把绿色理念嵌入了审批决策、信贷管理等业务流程，充分考虑土地审批政策、环保减排要求、行业技术标准等因素，将环境与社会风险评估作为授信决策的重要依据。比如，我们要考虑土地审批政策是不是合规，环保减排是不是达标，是不是符合行业的技术标准。开发银行全力支持打好大气、水、土壤污染防治3大战役，围绕长江大保护、黄河流域生态保护和高质量发展等重点领域，加大绿色产业和项目的信贷支持，推动发展循环经济和节能环保产业，促进生态环境质量持续好转。2021年上半年，我们发放绿色产业贷款2922亿元，截至目前，我行绿色信贷余额超过了 2.3 万亿元，为我国经济社会发展全面绿色转型提供了有力的金融支持。“十四五”期间，国家开发银行还将设立总规模为5000亿元的能源领域碳达峰、碳中和专项贷款，其中2021年我们将安排发放1000亿元，主要用于支持清洁能源发展，助力构建清洁、低碳、安全、高效的能源体系。深化国际合作方面，我们支持共建绿色“一带一路”。作为中国重要的对外投融资合作银行，国家开发银行把绿色理念贯彻到服务共建“一带一路”过程中。一方面，我们参考联合国全球契约相关指南，建立一套完整的环境和社会影响评价体系，完善国际业务 授信评审制度。另一方面，积极支持境外清洁能源和民生项目，按照国际生态环保理念和相关法规，引导约束企业开发、建设、运营项目，推动实现经济效益、社会效益、生态效益的有机统一。下一步，国家开发银行将深入贯彻新发展理念，把绿色金融作为业务发展的重要方向，继续加大对绿色产业、环境基础设施建设、绿色技术创新、国家储备林等重点领域支持力度，加强绿色金融国际合作交流，持续为绿色发展提供更高质量、更有效率的金融服务，为实现我国碳达峰、碳中和目标，维护全球生态安全做出开发性金融贡献。我的讲话到此结束，谢谢。是我们的问题还是
Fantastic. I'm muted. Thank you so much for your remarks. And it's fantastic to hear that the China Development Bank has such an important ambition. It's fantastic to hear the CDB has such an important ambition to engage with this market and engage this particular area. Thank you for your remarks. Thank you for being here today. But I have to say, thank you for your issuance, which is a leadership program for the Chinese market and showing how we can go forward and do the correct kind of green finance in the Chinese market. But next, Dr. Lu Zhengwei, who's the chief economist of the China Industrial Bank. And I have to say, a noted commentator, what people might not know about the China Industrial Bank is this is a bank has pioneered green activity and sustainable finance activity. They issued the first ever green bond in the Chinese market at the beginning of 2015, which is an unbelievably coup, so important. And of course, the China Development Bank before that was already doing securitizations of green projects and green bonds, but they needed to wait for approval from the regulator to call them green. They were ahead of everyone. And they continue to be a leader in green finance in China. We're very privileged to have you with us today, Dr. Lu. Your thoughts on the implications of the 3060 commitments by President Xi Jinping?
好，感谢这个肖恩先生的介绍。我今天呢汇报的题目是3060目标提出后，中国经济与金融市场的新变化。其实新变化呢，在我看来，从习近平主席呢提出来之后，在中国的金融市场主要有3点新变化。第一点新变化呢，就是从我们中国的绿色金融发展，从过去的减污而这个过渡到减污降碳并行，甚至以降碳作为引领的一个新的阶段，这是第一个变化。第二个变化呢，就是绿色金融开始从债务融资更多的向权益融资扩展。第三个新的变化呢，就是政策开始进行多管齐下的调整。那我们现在来一一的来看这3个变化。第一个变化，从减污到减污降碳并行。大家都知道，在2020年之前，大家谈起中国的绿色金融啊，其实主要是指这个降低资源的消耗，讲的是生态环境的保护、环境质量的改善这些东西。客观的讲关注这个二氧化碳的排放和应对气候变化这方面有，但还不是那么重视，还不是那么多。但是显然这一次习近平总书记提出来之后，一下子这个二氧化碳的排放、温室气体的排放成为了我们绿色发展的新的重点的领域，甚至在某种意义上说是一个引领的领域，最重要的领域。好，这是我们说的这个领域的变化。那具体的来看，我们来在绿色信贷上你会看得特别的清楚。你比如说，如果以赤道银行为例，现在赤道原则啊，它已经进入到了第4版，就是2019年是第4版，2003年的赤道原则是第1版。 如果我们仔细的去看它这4版的变化，它第1版对应对气候变化、温室气体的排放，它几乎没有讨论这方面的东西。然后2006年的第2版，它也没有讨论这方面的东西，只有到2013年的第3版开始讲到了说对于高排放项目进行温室气体的替代分析，包括要有这个项目的温室气体排放报告。但是到了2019年，它已经全盘的把巴黎协定、把 TCFD 等等这些披露的这些标准全部都写进来了。所以我想就是这是一个非常明显的新变化。那第2个很大的领域就是绿色债券。那中国的绿色债券在2021年，在习近平总书记提出这个3060的目标之后，进行了新的1版的修订。它明确的进行了一些调整。第一个调整就是把煤炭的清洁利用把它从这个目录当中剔除了。那么这个主要就是应对这个二氧化碳的这个排放的，是吧？应对气候变化这一方面。第2个呢，明确的增加了具有显著的减碳的这些新的领域，比如说清洁能源，清洁能源的高效运行、生态产品的供给、绿色交通。而且有一些你看就非常清楚的，就是跟这个减碳密切相关，比如说森林的问题，就是包括二氧化碳的封存和利用这些项目，全部都列入了这个绿色债券当中。然后在债券里面，我们的交易商协会和中国证监会这个管理的银行管理的交易所债券市场都推出了碳中和债。这些碳中和债明确的包括的这些领域都是具有直接减碳效益的领域，比如说清洁能源类的项目、清洁交通的项目、可持续建筑的项目、工业低碳改造的项目，以及其他的这个具有碳减排效益的项目。那么跟以往的它虽然属于一个绿色债券的一个细分品种，但是它跟传统的绿色债券不同的是，明确的鼓励发行人要求有第三方见证来这个测算披露你的碳减排的具体的效果，而且鼓励发行人披露企业整体的碳减排计划、碳中和路线图以及减碳的手段和监督机制。那么这都是过去的绿债，它不会讨论说一定要有减碳，而且跟碳中和这个要挂起来的，就不一定要有这个要求。但是这次碳中和债是明确的把这个放进来了。所以呢，在这里我也想到说，我们的气候债券组织那么提到的这个转型债券，那我觉得也是非常重要的。确实，对于像中国这样子的排放的国家来说，我们在指向这个60中和的这一个目标的时候，在这个过程当中更为重要的就是过去高碳排的这些行业、这些企业怎么样来向它更多的提供资金，让它尽可能的减少排放。因为毕竟只要这一些东西是我们在60年前还需要的东西，那我们唯一的办法就是尽可能的让它减少碳排放。而实际上在目前的绿色的概念下，很多是不能完全容纳的，就是容纳这一部分，也就是说它是不合格的绿色的这个融资的标的。好，那第2个变化呢，就是从债务融资向权益融资渗透。那我们看得很清楚啊，无论我们是讲绿色的信贷还是讲的绿色的债券，都是债务融资。但实际上这一次在中国市场上掀起的最为明显的一个变化，以前大家还有怀疑说这些企业盈利到底行是不行啊？你比如像光伏啊，比如说电动车呀，我们从2020年之后看到了这一些他们的估值体系的系统性的重构，也就是大家发现过去那一套对它的认识都是不对的，我们要考虑到这个60年中和的这个目标，重新来看待像这个光伏啊、风电啊、电动车啊这样的它的效果。所以以至于它整个的产业链都被带起来了。大家知道这个2020年呢，年内有13只翻倍的基金啊，股票型基金全部都是投新能源的，而今年的上半年大幅上涨的也主要是投这个新能源及其材料的。所以以至于在中国现在这个投资者当中有一句顺口溜是吧，叫有理走遍天下，无理寸步难行。这个理当然是这个做新能源电池的这个锂材料的这个锂，是不是？好，这是我们看到的这个资本市场的第一个新的变化。那第2个新的变化呢，就是 ESG 投资在中国的兴起。那我们看到了在中国涌现出了一批的这个 ESG 的投资的基金，中间在 E 和 G 的这个层面都比过去更多的关注了，说是不是有应对气候变化方面的这个关心。那还有这个股权投资的权益融资的最后一个方面，就是我们看到了很多 私募股权投资基金开始也披露他们面向碳中和的投资计划，因为确实整个的像这个零碳的一个转型，包含的技术是既有成熟的，也有在实验室的，也有从实验室到商业化阶段的。所以在这个过程当中，私募股权基金是很重要的。你比如我们看到高瓴，看到红杉，其实他们都披露了就是这样子的计划，而且投的项目的估值都非常的高，所以这也看到了，这是第3个新的一个变化。好，那么最后一个呢，我想说说政策的2个新的变化，就是在2个方面。第一个呢，就是国家关税税则委员会在5月1号和8月1号分别调整了2次关税。这2次调整的关税看起来动作不大，但实际上在我看来是微言大义。中间重要的就是，比如说对于生铁、粗钢、再生钢这种实行零进口关税，而提高了像硅铁、这个高纯生铁这样子的出口的关税。那实际上也就是说减少了这个高载能的这个产品的出口，同时呢，这个提高了要在中国高耗能的这样一些矿石的这个进口的关税，是吧？所以这是一个非常重要的新变化。那其实呢，我们分析了一下这些对于矿产、这个矿石这些矿产的这个产业链，就会发现它的上游的采矿业和上游的这个原材料的制品业，也就是从矿石到炼出钢锭、铝锭是碳排量最高的，而到后边其实碳的排放都已经比较低了。所以这样的一个变化，我预计未来是趋势性的，而且范围还会继续扩大。第2个在政策方面的新变化呢，就是央行从今年年初就讲，它要推出碳减排的支持工具。那么很多人在猜它是不是一个工具，那在我看来，它应该不是一个工具，它是一个工具箱，就是一组工具。比如说，包括低利率的再贷款，包括很可能未来还会包括指向绿色融资的这个定向降准，包括像对于绿色的贷款、绿色的债券，那么纳入央行公开市场操作的这个合格抵押品，甚至有更优惠的这个抵押的折扣率，还有包括在央行的宏观审慎的管理当中，就是所谓的 NPA 当中，给面向这个具有直接的碳减排效应的这个融资，你如果达到一定的水平之后，给你一个更高的评分。那么更高的评分有什么好处呢？就是在金融机构的这个保险当中，你的保费的费率就会更低。还要求金融机构未来要进行相关的披露，进行气候风险的压力测试等等。所以我觉得这2个方面是在政策里我们看到的新变化。好了，各位线上的朋友，肖恩先生，那我就先这个报告这些。
Thank you. Really great comments. You made some very interesting points. I want to take a couple to Ms. Huang in a minute. Before we do that, the transition discussion, the need to take the high carbon industries is, of course, Dr. Liu, a key focus of our work as well. I noted a couple of days ago that Sinopec, the Chinese oil company, announced 2 huge green hydrogen projects in Inner Mongolia and I think it was Guangxi, I'm not sure which other province, which are exactly what is needed as part of transitioning our economies that will hopefully provide green hydrogen to industry and to steel, which is currently high carbon, but has the opportunity to become low carbon. And I know that Baowu has great plans for this, the world's largest steel producer, in doing this. So it's very exciting, the news that's starting to appear. But your note of the taxation changes that are already underway in China is incredibly important for global audiences. You know, we have some countries like Sweden that has a high carbon tax, but in most of the world, carbon taxes of the kind you've mentioned to try and incentivize industries to shift have not yet been deployed. And it's very interesting to hear about these changes underway. I want to shift to Ms. Huang, from China International Capital Corporation, one of the largest underwriter banks in China. You've seen a lot of issuance and managed a lot of issuance going forward. You will be managing a lot of issuance going forward, especially in a market that's going to double in size this year. I'm interested to see what you're seeing on the ground with the implications or the carrying through of President Xi Jinping's 30-60 commitment. What does this mean for business? What are companies talking to you about? Give us a bit of a flavour, please. And, of course, your ambitions at CICC.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. I'm glad to be here for talking to you all today. And I think, first of all, the announcement of the 2030 and the 2060 goals certainly has created a lot of challenges for policy side, but at the same time, it provides great opportunities for both policy and the country's development, as well as the business sector. And CICC, being a leading investment bank in China, is embracing all these opportunities brought by the new targets. So since 2019, CICC has helped issuers to raise capital from the market by helping companies to issue bonds. So far, almost about $14 billion has been raised from the international market, and about $20 billion equivalent has been raised within the domestic market. And this year, CICC is also taking a leadership role in embracing, supporting all these new instruments and standards as it was introduced. So I think our previous speaker mentioned about the carbon neutrality bond. The China Development Bank was the issuer, and CICC has been the underwriter for this bond, and the bond was certified by CBI. So it's a good example how leading companies, leading firms and institutions are embracing all these new standards and instruments once they become available for the markets. And in June, CICC and China Bond Financial Evaluation Center jointly launched the China Bond CICC Green ABS Index as a way to promote domestic ESG investments. In terms of equity investment, Shandong Green Fund, managed by CICC, established this year with 1.5 billion yuan capital. It is China's first provincial green bond with investment from international institutions. And the innovation intends to demonstrate financial viability of equity investments in green. CICC also involved in the National Green Development Fund. It is as a shareholder of the fund management company. And the National Green Development Fund is the first national market-based investment fund to support green development and pollution control. On top of the investment activities, CICC is actively engaged in the outreach. The Global Institute of the firm published a book on carbon neutrality economics. And this is really for sharing practical business insights to engage with broader sectors from the business circle and maybe also the general public as well. CICC is a founding member of the Carbon Neutrality Action Alliance. It is an alliance established at the launch of the national carbon market with a number of large Chinese firms. The idea is really to pull a group of bigger companies together to support the launch of the national carbon market, as well as the dual goals with commitment to lead by example. And as you can see, when the policy momentum is right, commercial firms are really stepping up to take actions. And if you ask me what could be done more and to enable investment bank and the financial sector to do more, maybe a couple of suggestions. I think on one hand, I would like to suggest to continue to align with the ESG reporting and disclosure system with international standards. Information disclosure is a part of the overall efforts to internalize environmental externality, and it helps green companies to get access to the capital market, both domestically and internationally. A good ESG reporting and information disclosure system would help to build investors' awareness as well by showing investors how the investment is directly linked to the climate results. And speaking of climate results, it's highly relevant and it's extremely exciting. The national carbon market has been launched this year, and it creates great conditions for linking investments to climate results. it is providing new opportunities, as we recognize here, for green financing. For the first time, CO2 emission is actually being regulated at the firm level. Companies need to factor in carbon pricing in their investment decisions. And the carbon market also has a monitoring and reporting system that quantifies climate results. Therefore, as financial institutions, it is easy for us to see how investments are linked to the environmental results. And we are finding ways to develop business models to help our clients that carbon market can help to generate carbon revenue, and risk can be also shared between the issuer and the investors.
Thank you. Look, it's fantastic having you here. It is amazing what's going on, isn't it? On that point of what's going on, I want to shift to our friend Li Zengxin, who I know you've spoken on panels with before, so you know each other well in the past. Li Zengxin, you've had an interesting history. You're one of the founders, really, one of the original members of the Caixin staff and team, which is now become such an institution in China. But you've also worked overseas in many parts of the world, so you've got experience of how other countries. I'm curious from your perspective is what you see happening on the ground in relation to perceptions of climate change, especially amongst business and industry, and reactions to President Xi Jinping's targets. I mean, the question other commentators in other parts of the world ask, is this real? Or is this something that'll be a slogan but may not actually happen as quickly as everyone would like it to happen? Tell us what you're seeing.
Right. Thank you so much, Sean, for your kind introduction and the questions. I'm really glad to be here to be part of this, and I'm fascinated by the speeches that the previous speakers had delivered. I will have just a few points from the media perspective. I think first, public awareness and reception toward decarbonization is important. This is important because it relates to whether market participants will accept and how they internalize this green premium when making decisions, like Ms. Huang just said. We know here in China, there is almost no debate on whether climate change is real. It is real, although they could debate on how to achieve net zero targets. I think the heavy smog in 2009 really changed people's mindset about environment. And to the leaders, this problem, I mean, pollution is no longer a minor thing, but a threat to stability. Just to echo what Mr. Lu just said on revaluation, I think after years of development in the green sectors, and overall, overarching decarbonization strategy is more and more in line with the best interest of the public, of the companies, and of the governments. For consumers, I can take an example on electric cars, right? So 10 years ago, if you buy an electric car in China, it's because there is a huge subsidy from the government. Maybe 5 years ago, if you buy one because such a car with a green plate on the car, is because that's the only way you can get a car in a big city. But now it is because economically it makes sense, right? So many consumers just turn their gas cars into electric ones. So for companies, just our speakers mentioned also steel, even for those in high polluting industries like traditional steel makers, mandatory decarbonization may be in their interest as well. I think we all know there was a roller coaster ride in steel prices earlier this year. Now the production cut is really real. You know, they have to cut 10% of the production compared to last year in the remaining months of this year. And I guess this will continue for the coming years. So, and we also know that for steelmakers, they are to some extent in a dilemma. Their gross margin is too low. It is 6% at best, but they don't want to stop production and lose market share. So they are always speculating and guessing how serious the cut from the top is. Now that it is real, some producers may say, just if I can produce 1/3 less of steel this year compared to last year, but I'm making the same amount of money, I can do that as long as everybody else is doing the same, right? And of course, the most hesitating players in the market is the players are the local governments. They have to trade off between growth and meeting decarbonization targets. But here again, a national strategy and top-down approach on prioritizing these tasks could help. A good example, I think, is the electrified aluminum industry. So every year in China, we have shortage of power in the summer in many provinces, especially southern economic powerhouse like Guangdong province. We also know that southwest China is abundant with hydropower. So Yunnan province there is supposed to transmit some of the power into neighboring provinces. But right now, this is not working. That's because richer provinces from the eastern part, under this decarbonization pressure, move their aluminum production into Yunnan. We know in just 2 years, Yunnan's aluminum production more than doubled and became the number 3 aluminum maker within China, within the country. So this should be a win-win situation for those provinces, richer provinces. They are getting rid of this dirty stuff, and for Yunnan, aluminum is making out from the greener energy, and it is good for its growth. But then who is providing the power transmission to other provinces? So here, maybe a national top-down strategic thinking is needed. And China is also, we can say China is also so big and different across regions. Maybe different paces should be adopted as well. So my second point is that what China does has global impacts and can provide some valuable experiences to other countries. In some of these this transformation fields, China is the front runner now and will be the first to encounter problems that other countries will eventually have to deal with. Say again, electric cars. So we know that in the past 12 years, China's electronic car sales increased 100-fold to around 1.3 million per year. Around the world, there are currently 10 million electric cars on the roads. 40% of them is in China, right? So the next big thing is how to deal with the retiring cars, especially the retiring batteries. This is a pressing problem for China. And we see that just a few days ago, the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology announced the new measures to encourage or support battery secondary use. Areas, I think, such as this will provide good or bad experiences or lessons to other countries, which, that being said, leads to the last point, is that there are opportunities and demand for international investment and international cooperation. The challenge to meet its decarbonization goals is so huge that China cannot do it alone, right? And China knows in many areas of this, in new energy, like hydrogen, power storage, smart grid technologies in carbon capture, storage, utilization, China is still lagging behind. So it needs to learn from other countries. I think this is why China is making its own standards more compatible to international ones. Like Sean just said, China just updated its green bond catalog to be more in line with international standards. And this week, China also set up a big data center, to help support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. But fortunately, the international community is closer than ever to a consensus on fighting climate change. And now countries representing more than 50% of the global GDP has committed to net zero targets. And China and the US just fighting in many fronts are still working and can work further on this field. So this is the big trend, and we should all embark on. I will just stop here.
I was going to ask you about how China can work with other countries, is interested in working with other major economies in the world, now that we have common targets. But really, the challenge is how to get the provinces to work together, how to get China to work together. It's such a complex country and so many different directions. So, and I think this is one of the things that people in other parts of the world just don't get, that the economy of Guangdong is the size of Germany's, and there's 80 million people there, the same size as Germany. It's not the same as if you're in Europe or in the US or in other parts. It's a huge job, isn't it? But your points about change and at least the wrestling of these changes are very important. Of course, if we want to change things quickly, maybe you're right about the top-down aspect of it and the need to bring in a stronger top-down focus. So we'll come back to that. I actually want to ask Dr. Liu about this question about how the top-down will work, but more importantly, because we do have tomorrow speakers from US Treasury and US governments and from the European Commission about working globally. You know, we now do have common targets between all the major economies of the world when it comes to emissions reductions. It would seem that there would be a huge opportunity to deepen collaboration on how to achieve our green targets, including picking up the points you've mentioned about learning from each other, to be honest. You know, while there are technological areas where China can learn from other countries, I'm going to say that when it comes to the application of green finance, there are lots of things that other countries can learn from China in this area. So what do you see as the appetite for collaboration, or rather the opportunities for deeper collaboration? And if I can go to Dr. Liu first, then I'll ask all of you to address that question, because that's really important to our session tomorrow and to our discussions with other countries. If he's still there, have we lost him?
Yeah, I'm still here, but Mr. Liu.
Look, you'll have to go because Dr. Liu from China Industrial Bank seems to have dropped off. So please, Mr. Li. Oh no, here he is. He's come back.
He's back.
Did you catch that? Well, look, I'll tell you what, Li Zengxin, why don't you start us off in the conversation, and Lu Zhengwei, we will just update you in the question about how we give you a moment to gather your thoughts about the global opportunities for collaboration. Please, Li Zhengwei.
Yeah, I think I can just I will start with the shallower ones, but our real experts will follow on. I think a few points I want to make is, of course, there is international pressure from the U.S. Treasury, from the climate change envoy, saying that China is too slow to cut back its coal emissions and things. But we have to think of this, that China will always do this, no matter what, no matter it is on carbon or anything, it's on its own interest, by its own interest, on its own terms, and also. But what's different now is carbon. They are more decisive on its own by its own interest. I mean, if we look back when we talk about intellectual property protection, you can see for many years that China resisted on tightening. That's because we have not been at the stage that you need to protect your own enterprises' IP rights. So now only when China developed and China's economy developed into such a stage that it realized this is in my own interest. And also another point is that sometimes we can see that people say that the decarbonization or environment policies or sayings from the outside world is a conspiracy from stopping China from growing faster. But that conspiracy is never believed, I think, by any Chinese leader or Chinese people. They can use that as an excuse to delay their actions, but not really their they are believing it, as China joined the UN climate actions as early as in 1980s. The second one is on China's own terms. We can see the principle here is that we call that 先立后破. That means, establishing before disrupting the current markets and the current power generating systems. But all that being said, I think decarbonization right now is real, that means that the government and the authorities will be more tolerant to failures or even bubbles. That which make me think back in around 2009, when we were at a reception with Stephen Chu, at the time he was the energy secretary. He didn't know that I was a journalist, and he was talking to me that why China can have this industrial policy to support its new energy industry and the United States cannot. Now we can see that maybe Biden can realize that dream. So in a nutshell, if environment problems is an existential threat, then maybe we have to do a lot more and more progressive and aggressive actions on that.
That's interesting. That's a good argument. I might go to Dr. Liu now, Liu Zhengwei. This idea of the opportunities for global collaboration. What do you see as those going forward?
感谢肖恩先生。其实呢，我自己觉得至少有3点的合作是可以探讨的。第一个呢，就是无论是大家承诺2050年碳中和，还是中国承诺的2060年前碳中和，但是我们讲的是前严格的讲，我们并没有完全排除最后我们赶在2050年中和的可能性。所以呢，大家都有了这样的承诺之后，我们现在可能应该合作的是各个经济体之间公布各自的通向碳中和的大致的路线图。那么有了这个路线图之后，大家才能够其实做好这个相关的一个企业它才会有这方面的一个。那另外一个呢，第二个非常重要的呢，就是碳排放核算与报告的统一标准。在目前的 FSB 这个国际金融稳定委员会的领导之下，气候相关财务信息披露特别工作组就是 TCFD 和国际会计准则理事会就是 IASB 已经启动了这方面的工作。我想这个也是接下来，因为大家无论是谈国际上的这个合作的问题，还是企业间的问题，其实都与这个该怎么报告，未来要像一份财务报告一样，那么大家是纵向可比，横向可比。第3个呢，就是全球的碳市场与关税的协调，就是肖恩前面讲到过的，碳排放的控制与国际贸易之间，就是这2件事情都是这个造福世界的事情。但是呢，我们不能用一件好事情反对另外一件好事情，是吧？因为我们看到呢，这个已经有国家在提出说要不要这个有碳边境的调节税的问题。最新的我们看到了中国的气候的首席的代表这个谢振华已经讲说，觉得全球的碳市场可以进行很好的协调。这个时候呢，就没有必要再在国际贸易当中用这个税收，就是边境税来解决问题。所以我觉得呢，未来可能这2个方面呢，要做好协调，共同造福这个全球未来的发展。我就说这3点。
Thank you. I'm going to say this: the translation stuff is there's a bit of a lag behind it. So for our listeners out there, please bear with us as we manage this process. But thank you. I need to go now to our other friend, Huang Dafei. What are your thoughts on this issue of global collaboration, potential for it?
Sure. I will reiterate on the importance of standards. There's nothing else. It's more urgent to make sure there is the equal standards, the unified standards for ESG reporting, for quantification of carbon carbon emissions as well as climate results. And only by providing the technical standards, dialogue, and cooperation, countries will be able to be informed on the political decisions. So that would be my input. And also, as the previous speaker mentioned about the global carbon market, I think is incredibly important. And we're looking forward to hearing some good progress made in the COP26 in the coming months.
Short and sharp. I will tell the listeners that tomorrow we will have a session on the common ground taxonomy work that we're doing with Ma Jun's team on behalf of the PBOC, and we're working on part of the European Commission, which is a common definitional program, which is a type of standard, it's a key part of it, which we, or at least the ambition of Yi Gang in a speech he made for the network, the greening the financial system recently, the governor of the People's Bank of China, is that it would become a tool for all governments around the world to be able to use their own green definitions. It'll be a common approach between China and Europe. So a single, and in fact the Hong Kong Monetary Authority has already said that it's going to adopt the common ground taxonomy as the taxonomy for Hong Kong. So that's one attempt to address the standards approaches issue. But of course there are many issues that we have to address as part of this conversation. I'm sorry to say that we're out of time. I need just a final comment. I think we've lost Dr. Liu briefly, so I'm going to ask you, Wang Dafei, give me a couple of words. Are you hopeful this is going to grow, or do you think it's a tough battle? What's your feeling?
My feeling is policies need to lead the way. Incentives need to be provided to companies to do more green. And from what I have seen, the government's commitment has been pretty firm. So I'm hopeful. And once the ecosystem is put into place with the supporting technical guidelines and standards, the financial institutions would be ready to take it up and just come up with fantastic, innovative ideas and support business. Thank you.
Fantastic. Li Zengxin, from your perspective. You're mute.
Yeah, I think, again, back to the first question you asked, it is really real. It is, of course, tough. We know that 92% of China's carbon emission actually came from burning natural gas, from burning coal, from burning, petroleum. So maybe we don't only need a evolution, we need an energy revolution to achieve those goals. I think we should all do every bit we can to help that.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with our global audience. We've got 110 countries registered for this conference. Let's see if we can do more to get this message out. I'm looking forward to further conversations in the future with you because this is a story that needs a lot of discussion, a lot of working out. But in the meantime, we need to cut to our next session where we're launching something that will be very important in China, which is certification criteria for electrical grids and storage, which we need to understand that we need to electrify the world. We need to quadruple electrification, all those electric cars, Li Zengxin. We have to actually bring it to this because we've got to have all cars electric. So that means we've got to invest in electrical infrastructure. We need to understand that's a green investment. That means China Grid has to be understood as a green investment in a way that we haven't understood before. We're launching our criteria. Thank you for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you again soon to the next session. Thanks, everyone.